45 through 56, it says, "Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida. While he dismissed the crowd, after leaving them, he went up on a mountain to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars, because the wind was against them. About the fourth watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the water. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, 'Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid.' Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, countrysides, they placed the sick in the marketplace. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed." So this is the part of the message that you got last week, okay? So this is the beginning, all right? So what struck me last week is when, and I don't even know how it come to me, but I was standing up here, we were singing, and I thought about this story, and what struck me was the idea that Jesus told his disciples to get into the boat. Okay? Now, we follow what Jesus tells us. If he tells us to do something, we want to obey it. We want to follow it. And so the disciples, they get into the boat, and they're going to go to the other side. And Jesus is like, "Don't worry about me. I'll catch up with you. I don't know the arrangements, but, get in the boat. You're going to go to the other side. I'll meet you on the other side." Okay? And so that's pretty cool, pretty amazing, pretty common, right? And so Jesus goes up to the mountainside to pray. But what struck me was this idea that Jesus knew about the storm. He didn't need to have someone give him the forecast. He knew that he was sending his disciples into that storm. He knew it. He wasn't surprised about it. And it's amazing to me sometimes when we're here on Sunday mornings and we set off into the week, and we basically are going to sometimes set off ourselves into a storm. But Jesus is sending us out. And he knows, I don't know what's going to happen this week in my life. You don't know what's going to happen in your life this week. But God knows what's going to happen. He's not going to be surprised at it. He's not going to go, "Oh no, a storm came up. Where did that come from? Boy, I should talk to the weathermen a little more clearly. We should get this hashed out because I don't like these surprise storms." He's never surprised about a storm that comes into our lives. And Jesus wasn't surprised by this storm either. And so, what does the scripture say about storms, about trials, I'm reminded of James. What does James say? "Consider it pure joy, brothers, sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And it goes on then and says, "If you lack wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously." So this storm for the disciples was a storm that it was in their life to help them to grow and mature. Now, it's interesting. There's a little hint in there. As the disciples were going to their side and the storm comes up and Jesus gets in the boat, it says that the disciples, they didn't understand. Their hearts were hardened because they didn't understand about the loaves and the fish. You see, they were thinking about the loaves and the fish, and they thought Jesus was a little bit upset with them because they didn't provide, they didn't, and so they made it all, even the loaves and the fish, they were making it about themselves, when Jesus said, no, we don't want to make this about you. We want to make it about God's glory and taking care of people. But the disciples were still making that about themselves. And they were grumbling, and they were talking, and they were pointing fingers, and okay? And so the storms come, and they're going to come. We should expect them to come, and sometimes they do surprise us, like the storm in my life this week, and some of you are going through storms in your life. They're not on our radar, but they still come. But I want you to notice something, another thing that kind of surprised me on all this. Verse 48, it says this. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. And so about the fourth watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the lake. Many times when we go through storms, we'll even say, God, do you even see me? Do you even know where I'm at? Do you even know what I'm going through? And here's a perfect example. Okay, Jesus sent them out. He knew there was going to be a storm. And here he is. He's got his eyes on them. He's watching them. And I don't know, it doesn't give us any details about what was going on in the boat at that time. But he saw them straining. They were, using the oars. They were straining against the wind, against the waves. There was resistance. But I wonder what was going on in the boat. Like, was Peter yelling at him? Or harder. Thomas, you're not doing enough. Judas, put the money away and get to work. You know what happens usually when you enter a storm and there's resistance? Sometimes we turn on each other and, are we all going to die? If you would do your part, I think we could make it to the other side, And we can turn on each other. We don't know exactly what Jesus saw when he saw them out there, but he saw that there was resistance, and so he goes out there. And the main thing is I want you to notice that he saw them in the storm. Wherever you are today, the storm that you're going through, know that Jesus sees you in that storm. And the cool thing is, he left where he was. He left his time of prayer. He left the time with his Father, and he goes walking out to them on the water. You might think you're in an impossible storm, but Jesus can walk right out to you. You're in the middle of the lake. You're going to sink. Water isn't a problem. Jesus just walked out there. One of the things that they were probably afraid that they were going to drown, and sometimes the water can represent all those things that we think are going to destroy us or take us down. But Jesus comes walking out on the water to show that the thing that they're afraid is going to destroy them, Jesus has already conquered it. He's already walking on it like, it's not a problem. And we can take a lesson from that. So no matter what you're going through, no matter where your storm is, no matter what you're struggling with, Jesus has already conquered that. So Jesus went to them. It's interesting. It also says that he almost walked right by them. I was like, why would that be? Why would Jesus just he knows it right there. It's like, oh, no, just out for a nice little evening walk, And he almost walked by them. I think sometimes we're going through our trials, we're going through our struggles, and we don't offer an invitation. They didn't pray. They didn't say, Lord, help us. They thought they had to do this on their own. And it would have been easy for Jesus to say, you know what, they think they can do it on their own. Well, let's see if they can. And walked right by. Jesus is looking for an invitation. We need to invite him into our storm. Well, then he let himself be seen. And so they saw him. And they were all afraid. Oh no, it's a ghost. Have you ever been in a situation and someone gives you a word of wisdom or gives you an answer that you know that's the direction you should go, but you're like, I don't want to do that. That's scary. It's like the ghost, it's like, well, I don't want that. I want an easier way out. So sometimes the truth can even be scary. Sometimes Jesus can be scary. Especially when we misinterpret, especially when we don't totally believe, and we're kind of on the fence, we're kind of doubting, we're kind of, the truth comes, it's like, I don't know, And the disciples at that point were probably, I've been there many times, were probably praying, Lord, if this is really you, give us confidence that it's you, because it sure looks like a ghost right now. I've had times when there are challenges and there are storms and it's like the truth comes and it's like, okay, Lord, if that's really the truth, give me confidence to know that is really what you want. That is the truth. That's the direction I should go. And the good thing about it is God has always given me the confidence. And so, first it starts off with fear. Well, Jesus shows up. It starts off with the fear. There's afraid he's a ghost. They cry out. They cried out because they were terrified. But Jesus spoke immediately. And he said to them, take courage. It is I. And there are times in our lives that we truly need to have the confidence that Jesus is in the middle of our storm. That this truth that's been spoken, this direction that we feel now that we're supposed to go, or maybe even been advised to go, that is truly the direction the Lord wants us to go. That yes, this is truly from him. And there's something about this point is that immediately Jesus gets into their boat and there was peace. I've been in some storms, but I want you to notice, they weren't there yet. They were still on the lake. They still had to finish rowing to the other side, but everyone was at peace and everything was at peace. And there were times and storms in my life when I got the confidence to know that Jesus truly was in the midst of the storm and that he was going to help me, he was going to carry me through. And from that point on, because my confidence now was in Jesus, suddenly everything was at peace. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't have trouble in life. There's still troubles, to get to the other side, to finish oaring, to finish the project or whatever I'm doing. But there's a peace that comes when you know that this is where Jesus wants you, that you are in the center of his will. And so, what a picture we have. It's a powerful picture when we look at it to say, okay, Lord, we're still in the lake. We're still surrounded by water. But we know you're going to take us to the other side. And it's peaceful. Two more things quickly. Verse 52, starting with verse 51, it says, he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. So they just come out of a big miracle. Jesus just fed the 5,000. Okay? I mean, they should have been like, excited, like, wow, look at what Jesus can do. This big sign, this big miracle. Their faith should be at an all-time high. I mean, everything should have been going great, right? But they just come through this big miracle, and right away they come against resistance. They come against opposition. They come against a storm. And the faith that they should have gained from the miracle, just saying, our God can do anything. This storm isn't going to be a problem. God has told us to get in the boat and go to the other side. Well, we can rest in that promise, right? But they didn't. Everything melted away once they got into that storm. They lost their faith. They lost their excitement for Jesus. They lost their focus. And I think one of the things that came up while they were rowing was a discussion about the loaves and the fish and how they blamed each other for not being able to provide or not having the faith to believe that he could do it, or whatever the discussion. And their hearts were hardened. Man, we have to be cautious every day with our heart. That even after a big miracle, that we don't suddenly in the next little storm start to harden our heart, start to doubt Jesus, start to doubt what God's doing. We can get calloused, we can grow lukewarm, we can get hardened so quickly. So we have to be cautious. We have to be on guard for that. Because if it happened to the disciples, we're really not any different. And we need to be on guard against that. Because we want the thing that happened last to happen in our lives. And what happened in the verses, as soon as they got there, the crowds began to gather, and they gathered around Jesus. Notice it didn't say they gathered around the disciples. And so many times, it seems like we make it about us instead of about him. We want people to connect with Jesus. And it's amazing that the people were like, all they had to do was touch Jesus, or all they had to do was touch the edge of his cloak. And they received power from Jesus. They were healed, or their lives were changed. And so as we go out into the week, as we go through our storms, we want people, maybe they'll see us and they'll see us go through the storms, but we want people to be then attracted to Jesus. Jesus is still the main attraction. We are not. And they see us, but the greatest compliment they can say is, wow, how do you do that? How do you face the storms? How do you stay strong? How do you do that? It's all about Jesus. And so we have to stay rooted and focused on the master of the storm, Jesus. To know that he sees right where we are in the midst of our storm, that he's willing to come to us. He desires an invitation for us to invite him into our storm. And then when we have the confidence that he's there, we'll have his peace so that we can go out and do ministry, so that we can go out and impact our world for his glory. So, how does that fit into your world? How does this little message today speak to you? Are you in a storm? Is your focus on Jesus or on the storm? Are you grumbling to the guys in the boat? Or are you inviting Jesus in?
I wanna be a true